If you see this fast food chain, don't go through the drive-thru. Dr. Denny's Burgers. I had never heard of the fast food restaurant before, but it looked open and I really needed a coffee. 1 a.m. starts and road work can be absolutely brutal and you need something to keep your hands warm. It can get dangerously cold out there. The illuminated menu of the drive-thru beamed brightly against the rural bushland. These LED beacons seemed very out of place in the middle of nowhere, but I wasn't complaining. A fiberglass mannequin of what I assumed was Denny stood leaning against the restaurant wall. He was a clown dressed in a stereotypical doctor's outfit, complete with a white coat and a stethoscope. I'm sure the intention of his placement was to be a fun mascot for the kids. But these fast food figures always gave me quite the opposite feeling. I slowly swerved my ute through the car park and approached the speaker to order. I pushed my window down and the crisp morning air flooded inside. A voice crackled out of the metal box. "Hi, what can I get for you today?" They were either a man or the speaker was busted in a way that dropped their pitch. The voice definitely had a familiar quality to it. I leaned out of the vehicle in a bid to be heard as clearly as possible. "Just a coffee, thanks, mate. Flat white and full cream. Cheers." There was a spell of silence. It was like they were weighing up what I had just said. I wondered if they even did coffee here. They finally responded. "No problem. Drive on through." I released my foot from the brake and slowly rounded the curb to the payment window. Strangely, I couldn't see any light spilling out from its frame. I stopped and peered inside the building. I couldn't make out a whole lot, but there didn't appear to be any sign of noise or movement from within the kitchen. I reached out and rattled my fist against the glass. Nothing. I presumed they could be short-staffed and therefore each section might not be in operation. I drove down to the food collection window and was met with a similar scene. It was locked with a staff wanted sign taped to the glass. Nobody was around. It all started to feel a bit eerie and an instinctive feeling began to bubble in my gut, although the outside of the store was lit up like a Christmas tree. The place was a complete ghost town. I chose not to knock on the glass this time. At this point, I should have just left. I was going to be late for my job and the boss was definitely going to yell at me. He always ran a tight ship and held the expectation that I should always be there before him. However, curiosity tickled my mind. Maybe I had missed something. Backing up the ute, I reversed the way I had just traveled. I slowly rounded the curb and arrived at my previous starting point, the beginning of the drive-thru. The black speaker stood tall amongst the stones and low-maintenance plants that surrounded its base. "Hello, me again," I started. The speaker remained quiet. "Are you guys open, or am I going the wrong way? I just went through." I passed the windows and there doesn't seem to be anyone inside. The speaker gave no indication that somebody was listening on the other side. My questions rang out into the night unanswered. I pondered if the late starts were finally getting to me. Had I really begun to hear things when I craved caffeine? I started to wind up my window when the familiar voice chimed. "My apologies, sir. We are extremely understaffed." "Clearly," I replied, pushing my window back down. "It makes you wonder though, doesn't it?" "What?" The speaker waited a few seconds before answering. "It must make you wonder where my voice is coming from. Somebody had to be messing with me. There must have been a kid ... or someone who had gotten a hold of the speaker's headset and were operating it from elsewhere." These were all my poor attempts to rationalize what was happening. I believed them to be true until the speaker emitted a large exhale. Holla, avoh, whilst the noise was unnerving. The visual that followed gave me nightmares for weeks to come. Water vapor ... the foggy cloud which follows your breath on cold mornings. It came out of the speaker. It was breathing. I freaked. Adrenaline got the better of me and I threw a punch at the speaker's cover. Tiny plastic fragments shattered everywhere from the point of impact. I had smashed a small hole which revealed a pair of damp vocal cords inside the metal box. The pink and slimy flesh was embedded with various wires from the speaker system. I think they belonged to what was once a human. I shuddered thinking about whose they were. The cords moved and the speaker began to talk once more. "Would you like to join our staff?" Something slammed on the back of the windshield. I jumped. It was thumping on the glass as if a person was trying to get inside. Before I gave myself the chance to look, I released my foot from the brake. The ute began to roll backwards as I had forgotten it was still in reverse. I felt a body move under the wheels. As my ute backed out of the drive-thru, I feared to see the worst. I hoped for an animal, or maybe a speed bump ... but I was sure the shape had felt human. To my surprise, the Dr. Denny mannequin emerged from beneath. The clown laid sprawled out on the tarmac, still perfectly intact. A crooked smile was sprawled across its face. I wondered how it had moved from its former position. But I no longer wanted to wait around for answers. This was my opportunity to leave and never return. By the time I arrived at my worksite, I was considerably late. I would definitely cop a spray from the boss, but after everything that had happened, it seemed like the best case scenario. I remember thinking it would help me take my mind off of that horrible experience. As I exited my vehicle, I found him inside his truck, leaning over the steering wheel. He looked extremely pale and had his hands tightly wrapped around his neck. I knocked on his window and he turned to me, releasing his grip. Blood pooled out from a slit in his throat. He couldn't utter a single word. That man liked his coffee as much as me. I realized who the vocal cords had belonged to.